host, Demara Virgil, and this is Queendom Conversations Podcast. Today, I have an amazing testimony. I have a guest with me today, and she has an absolutely amazing journey that she wants to share with you. And I call her Dr. B. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we will start with her journey.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. My name is Dr. Bianca Ramos del Rio, and I'm a marriage and family therapist here in North Carolina. Yeah.
So I don't want to pronounce the illness that your child has. Let's just take it back to the very beginning. She has a rare condition, and Dr. B has been taking care of her, loving her. This is her daughter. And so I brought her on here because I know that there are a lot of women who are dealing with this, and they may feel like they don't have anybody to talk to. They feel like no one understands. But Dr. B is an example of what a strong woman is. She has another child. She's a wife and she has a career. She's a doctor. So even in spite of some of the things that she's dealing with, she's still resilient. She still has courage and she's still standing. You had a daughter, and was she sick when you first had her?
So she was sick, but we did not know that she was sick. She was born just like any other child in the hospital. For the first 9 months, we had no idea what she had, but then eventually, because she didn't meet her milestones, we knew something was wrong. So eventually, we were referred to a neurologist, and then I want to say at about her 9 month mark, she was then diagnosed with the Mowat Wilson syndrome. And at that time, me, for myself, I have never heard of it neither. It's not really common, just like maybe autism or Down syndrome. Those are like more common ones that a lot of people hear of. But then after the diagnosis, we just had a really long road ahead of us with just trying to get her to meet her milestones. And what I mean by that is she was not able to even sit up till she was about, what was it, 16 months old. There was an intensive or just immense amount of physical therapy and occupational therapy, and eventually to right now speech therapy. She is not walking yet. She is, how old is she now? She's almost 4. And it's just a continuous journey.
Let me ask you this because I have never heard of it before. It is the Mowat Wilson syndrome. So can you talk about some of the things that she was experiencing when she was younger, just to give women some awareness?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, basically, there is no norm for the illness. There is no spectrum. So basically, for her, she has had open heart surgery because she had a sling around her esophagus, which had to be corrected. She had some kidney issues that also had to be corrected, where they had to just balloon certain sections for her to have her kidney functioning not normally. Her esophagus was very narrow. So if you imagine your pinky, that's how thin her esophagus was. And it was as thin all the way up to last year, June. So we had to have a dilation for her. And then she has milk allergy, meaning there is an allergy against anything that has milk. So it's not just a lactose intolerance, but it's a full blown, if she gets any particles of milk into her system, her oxygen levels drops. And then EpiPen helps, but we have to get her on oxygen. We have to get her to the hospital. We have had instances where had really cost me more than my husband because he processes things differently. But for me, I turn in such a, I'm almost like a robot. I feel in these moments, I turn really numb because I know for myself, if I would allow myself to feel in those moments, I would just crumble. It definitely has had been a lot. Yeah.
Let me say this first, that I'm very proud of you for being able to get on here and have a
Yeah.
conversation about this, because I know that it's not easy, especially when you talk about things, then you have to relive them as you're talking.
Mm,
But I just want you to know that there are women who are going to get a message from you today. This is going to help some women. This is going to give them comfort because they realize that they are not alone. Let me ask you this. You have some ladies who their kids, they may have to have surgery. It sounds like your daughter has had a lot of surgery. There has been
Mhm.
surgery after
Mhm.
surgery. And so you
Mhm.
said that you get into a space to where you're like a robot. Okay,
Mhm.
talk to the ladies who, because there are some ladies who are just starting to experience this, that may have just found out that they have a sick child and they
Mhm.
don't know if they're coming or going. To the ladies who are going through some of these things now, can you talk to them about how you process this? I know you said that you get into the mode like you're a robot, but even
Mhm.
prior to your daughter having surgery, even after, just day to day,
Mhm.
you don't know what's going to happen when you leave the house.
Mhm.
You pray everything is okay. So can you
Mhm.
talk about how you're able to cope on a daily basis?
I think it's a little bit easier to cope because I have studied psychology, I have studied counseling, and it's a little bit different um, as far as like how I would approach something versus somebody who is not in the field. But
Mhm.
then knowing what I have to do for myself is I have to understand this is only in the moment. My faith is also helping me to guide me through this. And I have slowly learned how it is said, just give it to God. But the giving portion is the hardest portion to do, right? And I have learned to pray more intensely. And I have learned to let go a little bit more rather than trying to control the situation where there is not really a situation to control. Because this is literally what I would tell my clients: you are only in control of yourself, and that is it. Because everything else you're not in control over. If it is over a person, they are not controllable. They act the way they want to act. All of these things have helped me personally cope more. And then, of course, I would also teach my clients similarly the same coping styles because it really applies to everything in your life. Just how it would apply, how I would cope with my daughter, right? Because people have stressors, some more, some less. That is basically to what I would tell them.
So, do you express yourself to like other people, like when you have, because you're married? So, I can imagine that you and your husband have conversations, but just friendships and like people in the family. Do you
Mhm.
have honest communication about the way you're feeling, or do you just keep it inside because it's been going on for a while? And then
Right.
sometimes you feel like you're starting to weigh people down because you have all this stuff going on. So, do you
Mhm.
express yourself, or do you just keep it to yourself and then you just deal with it?
Mm. So it's a fine mixture. I have a friend, she also has a daughter who is sick, has a different illness, but we were really much in tune as far as helping each other. So be each other's support system. And I think if I can give one advice is for people who are going through things and are dealing with a sick child, or even if it is just a family member, try to get into maybe a support group where you have people who can relate to you, because those people are literally more of a support system than anyone else who would not be able to understand, who never had a family member or even a close friend who was sick, that you had to take care of. And then at the same time, my husband's aunt has been a tremendous amount of help as well, and his mom and his cousin, just because they are also in the field and work with special needs. So it is very relatable for them, just in general, due to the special needs spectrum.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I have been in the hospital before and it has
Hmm.
been minor things, and I've been with like people in the family. And sometimes they'll say, I don't want to ask too many questions, or I'm going to just let him do his job. And he went to school or she went to school. And so they know what they're doing. And so they don't question things. So you
Hmm.
do have some women who sometimes they're in the hospital with their children. They don't ask a lot of questions because they don't want to feel like they're bothering anybody. They're going to let them do their job. And then sometimes
Hmm.
when doctors, not all, so let me say that, but sometimes when doctors give them information, right, they
Hmm.
just kind of take it to heart. They don't research, they don't go outside of what that doctor is telling them. It could
Hmm.
be a specialist, it could be a referral. Sometimes you may have to change the
Hmm.
doctors that your children go to. You're not comfortable with them.
Hmm.
And then when the doctors are giving you information, when you're just sitting there and then you're listening versus writing things down, how have you handled going to the doctors, going to specialists, having conversations,
Mhm.
trusting their word.
Mhm.
Have you had to go to other doctors because you didn't
Mhm.
feel comfortable? And
Mhm.
how do you keep up with all of it, right? Not
Mhm.
just medicines, but you'll have a doctor come in the morning when they had surgery, tell you one thing. Then the doctor come in the evening because his shift is
Mhm.
up. Then it's like, okay, they look at the charts, but you're able to tell them what's going on because you know your child. She did this, she did that, she did this. So can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about those elements to women? Because
Mhm.
some people don't believe it. You do have women who will not ask questions.
You're asking definitely some really good questions. And I can definitely recall that specifically when it comes to different doctors, because as I mentioned earlier, my daughter has had several different problems. You find yourself retelling her story over and over and over. And not just doctors, but in the school system, in the quarterly reevaluation with the physical therapist and with the speech therapist. And then they're asking you, what are your goals for her? And all these questions can be very straining and frustrating because they're always the same, right? And then eventually you're thinking, the answer is right in front of you. Don't you read your chart? And it's the same thing when you go to the hospital and they ask you these questions over and over again. I do understand they may want to find something new that you may be able to present them, but it's so repetitive and it's so tiring. And I'm a person, I speak my mind. I don't get ugly, but I let them know, hey, I've retold this over and over again. It's very straining on my mind. Is this really necessary? And at the same time, I have found myself being more of an advocate to my daughter than I ever knew I could be because I trust doctors, but I want to make sure my daughter gets the best care. And in order for her to get the best care, I just had to get a second evaluation, here and there, because you do not just want to trust when it comes down to big surgeries, too, the first diagnosis. And we even had a genetic doctor involved. Then we have had so many other doctors involved. And I ask questions. I would not really go and be a Google warrior because, that would sometimes bring me and or other people really down the rabbit hole. It's not really helpful, but in regards to asking different doctors different questions has had been a tremendous amount of help. And I can honestly say for anyone who has a sick child, please advocate for your child because do not trust just because a doctor says something. Trust their word right away, get a second opinion, try to see if you can push further, and you're not going to regret it.
Mm. That's really important. And then something that I want to
Mhm.
add in is that you need to know your children, ladies. When
Mhm.
they're sick, like you need to pay attention if they're doing something different, if they're breathing different, if their eyes are fluttering. There are just little things they'll do to let you know that they're not comfortable or there's some
Mhm.
that are going to happen. And so you
Mhm.
have to know your child. And you made some really valid points. So,
Mhm.
are there other people in the family that have this? No.
It was a genetic doctor that is involved, but none of us have. Then let me also say we have not done a genetic testing on ourselves.
Okay.
So it is a possibility that it is either in my family or in his, but it has not shown itself
Mm,
in any one of our families. But it is a genetic disorder. Yeah. And honestly, with genetic disorders, your mind can quickly, as my mind did at the beginning, go towards sci-fi. Because I went to this genetic doctor and I had this idea, man, okay, it's a genetic thing. They can fix her genetics and then everything is going to be okay, right? Because we watch these movies and then we have these ideas. And honestly, when I went to the genetic doctor, and I just recently had another appointment with her. And I always ask her, is there anything we can do? Obviously, not genetically, but then possibly with DNA because things advance. And for her, for my daughter, she has also like a cognitive delay. So there are ways, obviously, these days where they can work in certain ways with the brain where the person can just excel more.
mm,
I just want to say, as a mom and as a parent, and also speaking to the other moms and parents, try never to give up hope. Because I think sometimes it may be easier for them just to accept it. And then by accepting it, pushing as hard as if you would not accept it.
Mhm. And so, what she's saying, ladies, is sometimes you can just accept whatever the doctor says, and then that's it. You don't question, you don't try to take them to another specialist. It's just, we're just going to go with this doctor, we're going to give them medicine, and then this is it. And so, she's
Mhm.
saying that you have to advocate, which means that even though they may say this is plan A, you can still make sure that there's not a plan B or C, and you don't have to try to make excuses of why you're seeing other specialists or why you want referrals to go to other places. Or doctors know each other, they're in the same fields, they may not talk about the patient's health records, but sometimes they're aware that you're visiting different places, and so there's no reason to feel ashamed about it. You have to stand in your truth, and then you have to advocate for your children, because if you don't, who is? Who's going to advocate for your child if you don't advocate for your child? Let me ask you this, and then we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, because this may be difficult, but this is something that I think of as a mother. When you think about the future,
Mhm.
right? Because you have some ladies who they're terrified because it's like
Mhm.
they don't have a diagnosis. I don't know what the future looks like.
Mhm.
I'm getting older. This is my child. What is your thought process when it comes to your daughter in the future, especially as
Mm.
you get older?
I can definitely speak on, well, let me first say that I had a vision for my daughter when she wasn't even born yet.
Mm,
So when she was born and I learned of her disorder, I had to deal with this disappointment of my own expectations first,
mm,
right? And then I have to go through this process honestly quite frequently when I go with her to different places where there are children in her age. And I know that my daughter is not there. So this part within itself is difficult. And I always also, because this is me as a person, which is not always serving me good in an aspect, but I think ahead, as you mentioned, and I am thinking, what will it look like for her? And then again, though, I have to remind myself I cannot let my expectations get the best of me, because if my daughter, she's always going to meet her own expectations. This is what I have to tell myself, right? She doesn't have to meet my expectations. So I have to think what I can envision for her, but also will myself quickly back in and be like, no, this is her journey. This is what I have to live by. So I'm honestly learning from her as I'm talking to you. I'm almost feeling like very, sometimes have that, like where I feel like goosebumpy and like chilly because I get these thoughts, where I have to find myself in peace and mindfulness to just live her journey with her, and I try to direct her journey. Yeah.
and so you're working at her pace. And so you're
Mm.
not putting all these expectations or textbooks or what the
Mhm.
doctors say. It's like, I'm
Mhm.
going to trust her, and
Mhm.
I'm going to move along with the way that she's
Mm.
moving, because this is how she's comfortable. And then I'm going to
Yeah.
be at peace with it. Something that I want to say that I really appreciate you being honest about: when you go places and
Mhm.
you see other children and they're the same ages, and she's not really at that point yet, because
Mhm.
I have children,
Mm.
and I know that can be a sadness there, because you want her to be able to do those things, to go up and down the slide, to swing, and then you want to experience those things with her.
Mhm.
Make you too emotional. So
Mm.
I can imagine how you feel, but I'm being honest when I say this. I talk to women all the time. You are
Mm.
the first woman who has
Mm.
ever been honest about that, who has ever said that when I go places and I
Mhm.
see the advancement of other children, that it does
Mhm.
give me the sadness, because I want my daughter to have those things.
Mhm.
And I know that it's painful, but that's why I said it's so important that you speak
Mhm.
the truth, because there are some ladies that feel that exact same way every time they walk out the house
Mhm.
with their daughters. They
Mhm.
go to the grocery store, she may not be able to walk. They have to put her in the cart. Just everyday things that we take for granted when our kids are hollering.
Mhm.
Put them in a cart. We put them in a car seat. They're crying, but they can function the way that they're supposed to. And we don't think about those small things that
Mhm.
some mothers wish they had. Right? He's running through Walmart. You got to catch him. Put him in a cart. And so it's like he's aggravating you, but
Mhm.
these are the things that some women wish that they could experience.
Mhm.
Children that we take
Mhm.
for granted. What does life look like for you now? Because your relationship with God, right?
Mm.
I think
Mhm.
some women, they think they have a relationship with God. They pray
Mm.
times, they read the Bible
Mhm.
times, but it's different when you have long conversations with God. It's different
Mhm.
when you read your Bible when you have a good day, when you have a bad day,
Mhm.
you wake up in the
Mhm.
just conversations throughout the day when you literally trust God, you give it to God, you don't try to take it back, you only focus on things that you can control.
Mhm.
So, how is life like on a daily basis because you
Mhm.
have connected with God more?
So, honestly, it is better, but it's still tough. And I noticed for myself that, and I also believe it's an age thing. I wake up throughout the night more frequently.
Mhm,
And instead of letting myself go to spiraling thoughts, I immediately fall into prayer.
mhm,
And I notice such a calm and peaceful feeling that literally brings me right back to sleep.
mhm,
This is proof for me that there is God,
mhm,
right? And then with that, if I carry on and I go to my job and I have to sit there, or not even have to, because I love sitting there and speaking to my clients and helping them through their journeys, which I often also refer to, and I wanted to say this earlier as well. Every journey that has had been more negative in my life, I use with what I do, and I can relate with people.
mhm,
Anything that I have been through, and I believe in that firmly, it had to happen because I have had clients sit in front of me who have an autistic child, and
mhm,
I can speak to them from parent to parent, and I can see with them. I also have some people who have had marital issues or just partnership issues, and being able to level with them. Things in your life happen for a reason. Does it feel ugly when you have to deal with situations in your life? For example, your child has an issue. It definitely does, but there is a reason for it, why this was given to you, right? And this also gives me peace. A little bit gives me joy because it brings me joy that I can help other people with
mhm,
that. And then that is basically what my life looks like on a daily basis when I go to the office and I speak to the clients. And I do not constantly have this in my mind where I'm not getting a call right now in this moment, even though it could happen. But I'm not trying to linger on these thoughts because then I cannot be my full self to my clients that they deserve to have.
mhm.
Yeah.
You made some really good points. And I think something that women struggle with and then they don't even realize it is overthinking things.
Mm,
A lot of times when that one thing pops up in your head, you have to know to cast it out, right? Because
mm,
entertain it for 1 minute, when it come back, you're gonna entertain it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then
mm-hmm,
no, that's all you're thinking about.
mm-hmm,
You can literally drive yourself crazy overthinking things,
mm-hmm,
especially things
mm-hmm,
that you cannot control. So for you to say that when you wake up in the middle of the night and then when you start to overthink that you start to
mm-hmm,
pray and that you
mm-hmm,
turn to God and then you get a sense of peace. That's
mm,
really powerful, ladies,
mm-hmm,
because you're having these issues when you're overthinking and sometimes this fear can just creep up on you from like nowhere, almost like anxiety and overthinking. What now? What am I going to do? What's next? And so when you give those thoughts to God, when you focus on only things that you can control, when you say, Lord, I trust you, I'm going to keep my eyes on God, I'm going to be at peace with this. God will never give you more than what you can handle. And what you said earlier about you feel like you went through some of this or all of this because there's a greater purpose, right? So when I talk to you and then when you tell me your story, I have compassion and I understand to a certain extent because I'm a
mm-hmm,
mother. But I don't understand completely because I've
mm,
never had to go through some of those things. And so for you to be able to sit at your desk and talk to women and when they tell you things and then when you can relate because you have experienced that pain, that's a testimony within itself. And
mm,
I think sometimes we don't think about that. We just think about all the bad things we've been through, the pain, the heartache, just all these things. And we don't think about, but why did I go through it? Right? What is the
mm,
purpose behind it? What did I learn from it? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And then how can I turn these things into something good? So
mm,
I'm really glad that you mentioned that because sometimes we don't think like that. We just sit down,
mm,
we overthink about everything we've been through. We just keep thinking about it,
mhm,
keep thinking about it. But
mhm,
why happen? What is your
mhm,
purpose?
mhm,
Who can you help?
Mm.
And then it kind of changes the heartache and it changes the pain because then you start to realize that even though I had to go through it, I am helping someone else. And so it
Mhm.
changes it.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this. If you could go back to your younger self and
Mm.
when you everything you have been through, because you've been through a lot, right?
Mm.
Probably too much to even keep up with because it's so many things. What are some things you would tell yourself? And I'm asking you this because there are some ladies who are at the beginning of their journey, they're in the middle of it. Some of them,
Mm.
they're towards the end of their journey and they're at a point where they just don't know what to say.
I would tell my younger self that no matter what happens,
Mhm,
you can make it through it. And this is literally the only thing that I would say, because I believe that everybody has the tools
mhm,
to make it through any situation. It's just at some points we do not know how to get access to the tools that we already have for within us.
mhm.
Have patience, because when we are younger, that we do not have much of, and let it come to you, because the control is not in your hands.
So,
I've heard some really good thing, and I was on a radio station, and they keep obviously ever so often repeating it. But it
mhm,
says, stop rewriting your story because your story had already been written. And
mhm,
it's so powerful because in the end, everybody's story has already been written in
mhm,
this great book, right? And trying to modify it, erase it, or do anything to it, it's really not going to happen because it's still going to play out how it was meant to be.
and that's very true. Do you have a favorite scripture you would want to share with the ladies?
So I definitely like John 3:16.
Okay.
So that's definitely one that I love, love, love. And I have to say too, the prayer, I pray in German because it's more true to me, because German is my mother language. And Father, that you are in heaven, holy is your name. That's my prayer that I tell myself over and over. And this is like the most powerful prayer to me. I think every person has to decide, or has have it come to them, what their prayer is going to be for them. But I wish for them to keep that one for the one, and repeat it over and over to themselves, and just let it sink in and feel it. Yeah.
That's a good point. I think that you have to be kind to yourself. I
Mm.
talk to a lot of women every day. We talk about a lot of different things. And one of the things that they always say is that they always go back and they second guess. Is there something that I could have did? Is it something that I could have changed? Is
Mhm.
there something that I didn't do right? And then
Mhm.
they don't have kindness when it comes to them. They're kind to everybody else, but they're so hard on themselves. And it's like you have to have grace for you.
Mhm.
You have to be at a place of peace and know that you did everything you could.
Mhm.
You are an amazing person and you're strong and you're resilient and courage shows on you. And
Mhm.
so we have to realize that we have to be kind to ourselves. I have two scriptures that I stand on. One is in my little notes. It's Psalms 46 and 5.
Mhm.
God is in the midst of her and she will not fail. And
Mhm.
Luke 1:4-5. This has got me through some dark days, through days where
Mhm.
I couldn't function. I couldn't even tell you my name. I was
Mhm.
in a very dark place. I had just completely broke down on every level possible. And then I remembered Luke 1:4-5. Blessed is she who has believed in the promises that God has given to her. And so
Mhm.
no matter what I'm going through, blessed is she who has believed. And that has gotten me through so many things. We are all growing every day, ladies. We are not perfect. If you don't have anybody you can talk to, you can journal, you can write things down. I watch documentaries, I listen to sermons. Sometimes I just have conversations with God. You would think I was having a full conversation with somebody in the room. I'm talking to God. I pray. I listen to my gospel music. I actually have a Queendom's playlist, and songs have gotten me through a lot of things.
Mhm.
There were times when I was just in a place where I was just in too much pain and just heartache to even pray. And I would sit in rooms and my tears, they would fall. And I realized that God knows what those tears mean. And I would listen to my music. It would shift the atmosphere and I would just worship God. And so there are just different things you can do to give you peace, but you have to figure out what it is. So again, I am Demira Virgil, and this is Queendom Conversations. And I'm trying not to get emotional, but I really want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And God bless you. And I'm going to pray for you and I'm going to pray for your family because it is hard, but God is faithful. He wouldn't give you this assignment if he felt like you weren't capable of being able to do whatever you're supposed to do within this season. So again, ladies, thank you. Thank you all for watching. Bye. Hello, beautiful people. I'm Demira Virgil, your host at Queendom Conversations Podcast, where we empower women one podcast at a time. At Queendom, I'm not just a host. I am a creator of many things that reflect the narratives and testimonies of survivors just like you. Visit queendom.com and discover a collection infused with meaning, from candles and aroma melts to prayer books, journals, apparel, and canvas art. Each piece carries a story, a survivor's journey, and a testament to resilience. And a special thanks to our sponsor, The Rose Co. at roseco.store. Experience the best hair where beauty meets luxury. Visit roseco.store today and support a small women-owned business. Your support truly matters as it empowers young women and contributes to their success. I love to see young women stepping out on faith and making their mark on the world.